Just to let you know, I need to leave at 10:30 today, so I'll send my apologies for then.
Thank you. Morning, Liz.
Morning.
Yeah, hope so. Lucian, we have to check if we're okay for voting and numbers of people as well. Okay. Thanks, Lucian. Thank you. Morning, everyone. Is it too late to say Happy New Year? Probably is now, isn't it? That was last week, maybe. But welcome to the first meeting of this calendar year, at least, for the Schools Forum. Brian Prebble has had to send his apologies as he has a trust meeting he was required to attend. So I'm chairing today's meeting. First of all, Lucian, have we got any further apologies other than Brian? Thank you very much. Right, I think Angela and I were just having a quick chat before the meeting started. I think we've got a lot of detailed finance bits to get through today, but if we can start off first of all with the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anyone have any factual corrections for those, or indeed any questions from those as well? I've just got a couple, Lucian, if I can, just to check that items are going to be picked up in today's agenda. We had on page 9, item 7 on the previous minutes. It was about the early years. Ian Morgan stated the report did not contain details of the early years variance, and officers agreed to look into this and report back to Schools Forum. Is that going to be covered in today's agenda?
It's one of the other actions from the minutes. Actually, there was the provider reserve amount and how that was to be distributed, how much that was. That was around £48,000, and that has subsequently been distributed to providers on the early years block on the early years side.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to page 11, there was a situation with the opening of the 2 new schools when Jonathan Wilding's reports. We've got a note, officers were working to find mitigating solutions as much as possible. Is that to be carried forward to the next meeting, or do we have any information on that today? I think if Jonathan's not joining us today, then maybe we need to carry that over to the next meeting.
Yes, we will carry it over to the next meeting.
Thank you, Ming. I think just one more note I had. I noticed on the looking at the makeup of the task and finish groups. I know the high needs block task and finish group. I'm a member of that, and Raj as well. There's only 2 of us. We had 2 leave at the end of last year. I don't think we've had any more people join. Al, I know you're trying to organise a meeting for us. Have we had any people volunteer for that task and finish group?
I'm glad you brought that up, Deborah. No, we haven't had any takers as yet. So if anybody would like to put their name forward, it'd be most welcome.
Thank you. I'd be most grateful as there's only 2 of us from Forum on there at the moment, so it would be good if we could have at least 1, maybe 2 more people on there. Okay, any other notes from the minutes from anyone? If we can move on to any declarations of interest. I'll take that as a no then. Just one note before we move on to the next item, which is the 24-25 revenue monitoring reports. There's a couple of reports for this meeting were in the to follow category, and I know they arrived just before the weekend, so there was a chance over the weekend to review, but not everyone gets that opportunity. Is it just a delay from information from the DfE? Was there anything else holding up those?
No, mainly it was the very short time scale on the DfE for the schools block budget. As we were discussing earlier, everything came out very well. Yeah. It came out in its normal cycle, but we hadn't had the time to do the previous modelling that you would normally see, the sort of draft presentation. And in terms of the timescale for us to go back to the task and finish group before the papers to go out for this meeting, we just didn't have the right timescale with Christmas being in the way. So that was the reason for that. I know it's not an ideal scenario, but the DfE haven't moved any of their deadlines for us this year. We still need to deliver on the 22nd of January.
Is it just a short timescale that caused that problem? Okay, thank you. Andrew, I think it's over to you for the first item then for the revenue monitoring report, please.
It is. I will share my screen, I guess. Hopefully, as we have discussed, everyone has the agenda items. Luciani?
Sorry, just a point of clarification. I have a Kelly Moon on the call. I don't have that person on my list of members. I'm just wondering who that person is. Kelly Moon? The name appears as Kelly Moon.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself there. Yeah, I'm the representative for Wokingham NEU. I know you've got it recorded as Michelle Purdy, but Michelle Purdy's now left her position. I wondered if you could just change the position to district/branch secretary, because again, it might not be me in the future.
Deborah, do you want to consult? Do you wish to accept that?
I think unless there's any objection from Schools Forum members, I think that's acceptable. Obviously, if the previous incumbent has now left, Kelly, will it be someone different at every meeting?
No, certainly for the next two, it'll be me. It's obviously, we are still negotiating around the trade union facilities agreement with Wokingham HR currently. So it could well be me for the foreseeable, or it might be somebody else.
Okay, so it does change. It would be someone, it would be the same person. I'm just thinking of continuity of the information from meeting to meeting.
Yeah, it would just be helpful also to get in touch with Democratic Services to let us know in advance who is attending.
Yeah, not a problem. That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the revenue monitoring report, hopefully you can see it on the screen. I don't propose to read through it. We have the figures here to the end of December 24, where we've got an in-year deficit of 19.6 million projected as our outturn. Mainly that budget pressure is from the high needs block, which would give us a cumulative deficit with last year at 20.2 million. Al's going to talk later about the high needs block in a bit more detail, but the key variances and risks there, as you can see, we had little movement on the growth fund, but it is mainly the high needs block. We had a budget setting of an in-year deficit of 10.2 million, and that's continued to grow as the year's gone on, and we've seen an increase in our the demands on that service. The detail is within there from the mainstream, the number of EHCPs, the independent sector, the movement there in that budget, and then the other categories such as the education outside of school, alternative provision tutors and therapies. We've got no variances within the early years block and the central services. So that's really all I had to say on that, unless anybody has any questions.
Just one from me, Angela. It's probably something, Al, you might be covering it in your section, but looking at that background, there was a forecast deficit of 10.2, But then to increase it by 9.4, I mean, we're almost doubling that deficit amount, aren't we?
Yes, and very recently we've revised our forecast. I think, you know, our original safety valve projections were ambitious, and in light of the increasing gap that we've seen over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, we've decided, in communication with the DFE, to revise our forecast figures. So there's been a sort of recalibration, so that's why that gap seems so severe.
Okay, so that's sort of more realistic in terms of the outturn at the end of March.
Yeah, indeed. We've decided to recalibrate, so we're reflecting reality, really, you know, based on the current run rates we've seen over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I think, you know, comparing it to the original budget was just a bit misleading, so yeah, we've decided to revise.
Okay, was it the incoming data that made the original budget misleading, or do we know why that occurred?
So Deborah, that was the original safety valve agreement that was set
Right, okay.
more than 2 years ago now. So that was the what was deemed to be a good forecast at that point in time. We know nationally that the picture has changed and moved since then, as has we in Wokingham, and what OWL is reporting now is more realistic of our current trajectory.
Okay, thank you. Ming. Ming, oh, sorry, Mark, first of all.
Hello, and the question really is it worth having almost an unmaintained special schools strategy in order to try and reduce the amount of children that are sort of requesting that, or families, and trying to sort of think of that as a sort of bigger package, because this is where all the extra spend is, majority of it is going, and is that worth almost having like a task and finish group or sort of like a working party, trying to think about what could we do between different sectors to try and reduce the number of families looking at this option, and then what could then be put in place to support, because typically what's happening is that there's children in schools that are then suddenly going from a very minimal amount of support financially, and then not necessarily being successful, but then it's then suddenly escalating up into a situation where they're then requesting £80,000, £100,000 placements, and if they're not satisfied with the answer, then sometimes they are going to tribunal, and Wokingham is then having them to go with the results of the tribunal.
I mean, you're on mute if you're talking.
My apologies. Yeah, I think when I initially put my hand up with about that deficit reconfiguration, it's across the board, across the country. I think that when you have initial prediction, they I think putting different ambition target to achieve forecasting. And out of that, DFE did recognize that as every safeguarding safe valve authority to reconfigure. So almost across the board, they all increase. I think we increase as well. Just want to let the context is that the initial forecasting when we bid for safety valve, like Emma said, was ambitious. Yeah. Now later, I think the thing change and also more challenging circumstances emerging. In terms of what Mark said, I think it's a very, very good thought. I think that's exactly one of the focus we want to work with school leader. I think we talk about saying work with school leader. Some of the young people, you have to place them. Some very expensive places. You have no choice. Let's the only place they can meet their need. When we look at all those cohorts, we have large EHCP cohorts in proportion to general pupil population. Whether certain group of young people actually came from school to do it, and they can their need can be met in different way. in mainstream school, etc. That's something we really want to explore with school leader. We already working to see how we can have that conversation with market, like you, school leader like you. I think we have learned from Banding Review to get school leader involved from outset. It's really beneficial. A lot of good idea from that. So what the point you make is really good, and I can show you we're working on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ming. Any more comments on the revenue monitoring report? Chris.
Oh, Deborah, just picking up on that point about the deficit. Are we aware of how we sit amongst other local authorities in the country in respect to, are they showing a similar deficit? Are they showing a similar increase in what was projected? And are the numbers of EHCPs, which obviously drive this, are we in line with percentages of EHCPs against students being taught in our schools to other local authorities?
I just wondering whether Jeremy want to kick in. I think my understanding is most recent check our deficit in proportion of general population. We are about average. We're about average. In terms of EHCP, we're in line with the national trend. It has been the need have been growing very big. I just wondering whether Jeremy to have any more information on that. I think growing fast. When I check the latest DFE report, again, latest DFE published report, what they call Wave 2, it seems to me, in terms of growing EHCP, pick up the pace in past 2 years. If we talk about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, our EHCP actually below the national average. Now we in line with them or slightly above. Jeremy, you may want to add more meat on that.
Yeah, I think you've covered it, and I think that it's almost every day now that we're reading in the sort of press, in the news, so many articles coming out, reports coming out. We are not alone. Wokingham in the incredible challenges, financial pressure that we're facing as a system. There are a number of safety valve local authorities, a number of other local authorities in receipt of is delivering better value. So all of those local authorities have a deficit that they're carrying in their high needs block. The same in Wokingham. We feel it a bit more acutely in Wokingham because we're one of the lowest funded for is it our DSG? If you compare to other local authorities, we're one of the lowest funded. So we feel that pain more acutely in Wokingham, but that's not within our gift. As much as we sort of try to lobby that's not in our gift to change. And in terms of, Ming's right, in terms of the EHC plan numbers, we were actually a few years ago, certainly pre-pandemic, under sort of that growth from 2014 to 2019, we were under national average, but that trend has reversed and we've almost caught up. So, incredible demand, certainly from 2021 onwards, which just places more pressure on our system. So we've got more EHC plans, more children in mainstream settings, probably compared to other local authorities, but also certainly not alone in feeling that sort of double-digit increase year on year in the EHC plan numbers. So it's just, we're and the DFE recognised when we sort of recalibrated or reconfigured our forecast deficit, they recognise we are doing a lot as a partnership in Wokingham to try and tackle the systemic issues that we're facing, and we're doing some really good work, especially over the past sort of 2-3 years as a partnership. We've come an awful long way, but the money hasn't followed. And that's because obviously a lot of the things that have changed over the past 2 years, in particular the cost of those independent non-maintained specialist settings, have just gone through the roof. but we've also seen, more children moving into education other than at school, increased costs around alternative provisions. So it's almost just a perfect storm. So we're doing all the right things coming together, and even Mark suggesting that let's get together, have a look at. That's a sign of us as a system and as a partnership asking the right questions and challenging ourselves. What can we do differently? But we are also in this national system where we need systemic change to happen as well. So.
Yeah, but can I come back on the point, I think, about the funding? As you know, recently the government have local DSG, local government, we talk about DSG, also local government settlement for children's service, etc. The place like Wokingham is always been perceived as an affluent area, and in DFEs and the government's other funding formula, we are greatly disadvantaged because of that. I think this year, for example, the settlement, local authority settlement, we actually get 1 million less for the other, while many local authorities get more funding. So in response, we have proactively, before the budget settlement, our chief finance officer, DCS, Emma, chief executives went to cabinet office, went to DFEs, went to DLS, the government local authority funding agency, to make presentation that said this funding formula is just not fair to local places like Wokingham, because those needs are there. Doesn't matter how affluent you are, same need. Probably when you have a affluent place, a better educated population in a place like Wokingham, parents probably know how to ask for EHCP to make sure their children's needs are met. That's the right thing to do. But for the funding formula to set out, to consider different factors or disadvantages without taking into account the needs of SEND, to make us in a less favorable position. So what I'm going to say, what I have been saying is, the council has made good presentation to the government. The government recognized that I think actually local government association set it as a good example to say how Wokingham make good presentation to actually inform the central government about the local challenge. But we haven't got money yet. They thought that we could make good presentation. Just to let you know, we are working hard to make our case to the central government.
Al?
Yeah, just to sort of reiterate Ming's point, just to put it into perspective and context for people, we're the third least funded authority in the country with regard to, the schools block, and when it comes to the high needs block, we're the 10th least funded in the country. So on a per pupil basis, that does really bring some financial challenges. I just wanted to, make that obvious to everyone where we sit compared to other LAs.
Yeah, and I don't think that's us sort of getting the violin out and sort of, try sort of say, woe is us. We've still been really proactive with all of the transformation and with lots of different lots of really collaborative work around how can we approach this challenge differently. But it is, you have to note it. It does make that's a lot of money that we don't receive. So and it's how we, again, as we all know, it isn't about just talking about the money. It's about that impact on sort of children and young people in Wokingham that we all play an active role in supporting. So it's the right conversation. It's the right thing to pick up, but ultimately it's about children and young people, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we'd all agree with that, Jamie. I think that's the key thing to get right, isn't it? The support for the children as well. And Al, I'm pleased to hear that we're the third lowest funded. I thought for a long time we were sort of second. We've come up one from my previous knowledge we had of that situation. So that's a slight positive as well. But I think we all appreciate that situation. And for those of us that are aware that the national funding formula was going to be announced, how many years ago was it? And we're still waiting for some kind of correct national funding formula so it smooths it out across the country. We might be waiting a bit longer. With that, happy news on the revenue outturn for 24-25. Angela, we pass on to you for looking at the 25-26 budgets, and we're starting off with the Central School Services block.
Yes, that's right. I'll again share my screen. It's a little bit of lull in proceedings because we do move on to the high needs block budget after this, but I'll just run through the Central School Services block. This is basically the funding that supports the statutory duties that the council has to undertake. We've seen a slight increase from last year. We've got a 1.2 million budget, which is a 89k, 7.5% increase on last year. And we've just sort of allocated that within the budget. And as I say, it just allows us to carry out our central functions on behalf of the school community. The appendix has the details in there, so I wasn't going to say anything else unless anybody's got any questions.
I think the only thing I noted, Angela, was just a change in the, I think one item you had an increase on, but a couple of others were decreased, but it seemed pretty much the same as last year's budget in terms of spread
Yes.
across the lines.
Yeah, broadly speaking, it remains pretty static from last year.
Yeah. Any further questions on that Central Schools Services block? It is an item we need to vote on, so if anyone's got any questions for Angela or indeed anyone else. If we could go ahead and take a vote on accepting that. So I believe that's the first one we need to vote on, Angela, isn't it?
I think so, yes.
If I just go through the list, if I could just have a yes or no. Lucianne, correct me if I call out anyone that shouldn't actually be voting on this. So I think I did that last time. If we start off with Mark.
Yes.
Nikki. Sorry, Nikki Taylor-Dickens.
Yes.
Julia. Is Julia's here, I think, isn't she? Let's move on. Phil. Raha.
Yes.
Liz Woodards.
Yes.
Darren.
Yes, Chair.
Shirley.
Yes.
Thank you. Jenny.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Yes from me as well. David, is it David or Linda here today?
Linda Wood.
Linda Wood. Okay. Ian, can we move on to Ian Thomas?
Yes.
Moving on to early years, Kerry.
Agreed.
Ian Morgan.
Yes.
And Lucianne, can you just confirm, are there any further people to vote on that item?
Steve Jump.
Yes.
That concludes the voting there, Chair.
Thank you. I think apart from those few we didn't have details. Liz, you have a question. You have your hand up.
Sorry, I should have asked this before the vote. I was just looking at it, and obviously it's gone up 7.5%. I just wondered who decides that, and also because obviously that's above the NJC support pay awards and things like that. So I was just wondering why 7.5% has gone to the Director of Children's Services education staff.
It comes as part of our budget from the DFE. It's that's how we get the allocation.
Okay, so the DFE sort of choose to put that funds into the. Thank you.
If there's no further questions on that item, and thank you for your votes, we're moving on to the high needs block. Andrew, is that you or Al, are you taking that one?
That's me, Deborah, thanks. It's just an update on next year's high needs block budget update. Obviously, we've already discussed the high needs block and the challenges we face. As Angela alluded to, we're projected to increase to a cumulative deficit of 38 million by the year end, which is an increase on budget, as we discussed. We do have this statutory override, which is still in place till March 26, which sort of siphons off the DSG accounts from the wider authority accounts, and we're anticipating that will be extended, but we're still waiting on news. We were hoping to receive news, but that hasn't come out quite yet. In terms of next year, of the 2.3 billion increase in funding nationally, 1 billion is for the high needs block. Now, across the authorities, there've been an increase of about 7 to 10%. Unfortunately, Wokingham is at the lower scale. We received an increase of 7%, which equates to around about 2.8 million before deductions. I think there was a bit of a typo in the report, but it's 2.8 million increase on this year, which is obviously welcome, but doesn't quite close the gap and our trajectory. But yeah, again, it's an increase which is very welcome. In terms of the budget setting for next year, we've obviously got the task and finish group, and as we discussed earlier, it'd be good to broaden that group, get more members involved. We're meeting at the end of this month. I think it's the 28th of January. And then depending on the conversations, we'll probably have another few meetings after that to tweak the model and discuss rates, that sort of thing. But apart from that, that's the only thing to really report. That's the main thing that came out from the government, that £1 billion increase, equating to 7% for Wokingham. And yeah, we'll be doing the modelling over the next sort of six weeks in partnership with the Task and Finish group to report a final high needs block budget at the March Schools Forum.
Thank you, Al. Can I ask if anyone following that report would like to volunteer for that high needs task and finish group? Must be a couple of people really keen to get involved in that with the challenges it faces.
Or if you don't want to put your name forward right now, please, send us an email, and we'll be more than willing to get you involved.
Or indeed, your colleague want to have some discussion before you make a decision, just reach out to the current member or to me or to Al. We can have a chat before you make a decision.
Thank you, Ming. Thank you. As we've got the more detailed budget in March, Lucianne, I'm assuming we don't need to vote on that item?
I'll be guided by the officers. Is this the final budget? Do you need a vote today?
Oh, I don't think we need a vote today.
I don't think we need a vote on the high needs block, but on the schools block budget, yes, we will.
Yeah, we're coming on to that one, but high needs will go to the March meeting, for the votes. Yeah. Okay, let's move on, and I think it's back to you, Angela, for looking at the more detail of the schools block budget, please.
Yes. We've got the schools block budget here for the group. I will again share my screen. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to have a look through the report in detail. The context around it is we had our notification from the DfE, I think the week before Christmas, which allowed us to model through the APT, taking into account the direction of the task and finish group, and the agreement of the schools forum to the 0.5% transfer to the high needs block. The direction from task and finish was obviously to incorporate that 0.5%. We also looked at mirroring the type of arrangement we had last year with the 0.5% transfer in how we could spread that amongst the schools, and spread the burden as equitably as possible. And we've done that through the model, the levers that we can pull in the model. There's very little room for manoeuvre now, as we have to move towards the national funding formula and the parameters within the APT. We are either within the national funding formula, or we are moving towards them. So that's the direction of travel. The proposed final budgets. So we had we've had 158 million in our notification, our allocation, which is up from last year, which was 147 million. But bear in mind, this incorporates a lot of the grants that were issued last year, such as the core support grant and the teachers' pay and the pensions grant. So that's all been rolled into that funding. We've seen an increase in the budget for the majority of schools. The only schools that have seen a reduction have also seen reduction in pupil numbers. Obviously, one leads the other. And the table here shows you the comparison with prior year, just for your information. And then there's a summary there of the elements that we've put into the model, as I said, as instructed. The growth fund, again, we've reflected the wishes of the schools forum, and we require 1.7 million there. So the things that kind of come off the headline figure are the growth fund and the transfer to the high needs block, and then the results of that are in the tables. The Appendix A shows the funding per school, and Appendix B shows the contributions that each school will make in relation to the block transfer. So happy to have any questions on the proposed budget.
Angela, can I just ask a question about the appendix? When you say we've got the appendix with the block transfer comparison, can we go down and look at the detail, which was really, really tiny?
I was going to say, I'm not entirely sure that it's.
I can't actually see any details on there. So
helpful by the screen,
if schools are looking at this to get an idea of what the figure's going to be for 25-26, are they looking at the first column, option 1?
It's option 2, I believe.
Option 2.
Option 1 was the where we didn't do any kind of changes to try and spread that transfer. Option 2 was the one that mirrors last year's sort of apportionment of that.
Yeah, the smoothing out across the schools and their contribution as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add, we just wanted it to be really transparent. As we voted at I think it was the November Schools Forum, we wanted to follow the principle and logic as this year. So we just wanted to put those two comparisons there to make people aware of how we can sort of try and manipulate the rates to come up with a solution that's very similar to this year.
Thank you. Got any questions on this schools block budget or the distribution? I know we're pretty much following the same methodology as last year, so we've got the same rules in place.
Darren, I don't know if you want to chip in with how we came to those sort of conclusions from the task and finish group.
First of all, thanks very much to yourself, Alan and Angela, for all the work you did over the Christmas break on this. I know it was a very tight turnaround, and to everyone in the task and finish group. The option 2 is the one that effectively protects the primary schools. So the bulk of the funding for the transfer is coming from the secondaries. Angela, do you maybe want to talk about the sparsity funding? Because we made a little change to that, and possibly about the conversation we had about free school meals funding and what we're going to hopefully look at for next year.
Yes, certainly. In the task and finish group earlier this week, we looked at whether we could increase the sparsity payments. We've got a couple of schools that benefit from that. And if we do move that towards the sort of middle of the factor value, that will impact on the per pupil rates of about £1 for the primary and secondary school pupils, but will assist those schools by about £20,000 each. The other thing that we were looking at in the task and finish was whether we should be, at the moment we're on the very minimum factor value for free school meals. I think there's a bit of a debate about whether actually we should be putting more money into that element of the funding, as it reflects possibly a higher need for those schools and reflects the makeup of those schools. What we were looking at in terms of modelling, as Darren says, for next year, because the timeframes were just so tight this year, it's been very difficult. We were thinking maybe we do the 0.5% as a straight transfer without any adjustments for primary schools or anything like that, but put more money into the free school meal factor values to see how that would impact schools. And obviously we'd have to look at the modelling and see how that would shift things for schools. But that might be more reflective of need within the school community. Something for us to consider for next year, I think.
Thanks, Angela. Any other comments
Thanks,
or
Angela.
questions for anyone? This is an item that we need to vote on. So if there's no further questions, I think so that you've all had a chance to look at the figures, can we just go through the voting list again? And can I have a yes or no from everyone on this item? Let's start again with Mark.
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm assuming we haven't got Julia or Phil then, as we didn't vote on the first item. I've got Brian or Neris. Raha?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes. And
Darren?
thank you.
Yes.
Shirley?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Yes from me as well.
Yep.
Ian Thomas?
Yes for me.
Thank you, Ian.
Chair, you missed Linda Wood.
Sorry, Linda Wood.
Oh.
I don't think we had a reply for the last vote.
Yeah, it says she's present, but maybe she is not.
Okay. Kerry?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Morgan?
Yeah.
Steve Jump?
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's everyone from those few that we missed, Julia and Phil and Linda Wood. I'm assuming that they're not present in the meeting today.
Morning, it's Phil here. I literally
hi,
have
Phil.
just turned up. I'm so sorry. I wasn't expecting to be able to come, but I've managed to move things around and I'm now here, so I have no idea what I'm voting on. So it's probably not right for me to put a vote in now.
That's a good point, Phil. Okay, that's accepted. Thank you very much.
Deborah, I had to respond to a safeguarding matter at my door, so I'm afraid I was distracted at that point.
Is that Linda? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you voting yes on that? Did you get enough information to be able to vote on that item?
I didn't because I had to speak to member staff about the safeguarding matter, so I'm afraid not.
Thank you, Linda. That's noted. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Al. Yeah, and I do appreciate all the work that's been put into that, particularly over the Christmas period, and the DfE and their tight timescales, which I think we will experience. I'm going to say from time to time, but it's fairly regular, isn't it, as well? Can we move on to the early years block budgets, please?
Certainly. That's me as well. And I will share my screen. So at the time of writing the report, we hadn't started the modelling, or we're about to start the modelling on the early years block budget. So the report just looks at the background of what we are intending to factor into the modelling there for the early years. So there's no significant changes in the factors and the entitlement. The only real change is the extension of hours for the under twos from September, which is reflected in our allocation, which for 25-26 is going to be about 30.5 million. So we're currently working our way through that modelling. Actually, we were looking at it yesterday in terms of how we can work through for the rates for providers, and we'll take that to the task and finish group, which is booked for the 28th of January, with the intention of releasing the rates to the providers by the end of February, which the guidance directs us to do. So that's really all I had to say on this, because it's as I say, it's a lot of detail about what we're planning to do and put into the budget. No real changes from last year. We'll have a provider reserve fund. We'll have some inclusion funding, and we can top size up to 4% to fund the duties of the local authority in facilitating the early years budget, I guess is the easiest way to say it. So really no significant changes, and it's really for the group, for the forum to note, and we'll be in touch with via the task and finish group.
And we'll be voting on this in our March meeting, Angela, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Ming.
Thank you, Deborah. I just want to take the opportunity to add something non-financial aspect. In His Majesty Chief Inspector's report, they really praise working on early years provisions. They use a sort of measure to work out what they describe 5 top local area with the same provision and sufficiency, like described as early years oasis. I think that's the terminology they borrow from Australian education system, and the others, bottom 5, described as early years provisions deserts. We're very top internal access to early year provisions. That's not just about have enough number, it's about quality, about easy access, equitable access, etc. I just would like to say well done to early years leaders and workers and practitioners. It's really, literally very top number 1, the best one in the country. Well done.
Yeah, that's great news, Ming, isn't it? That's really good news. Ian, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I wonder if that sort of feedback you could feed back to the early years team so it could be fed out to the providers, because a lot of providers don't see this, and I think that sort of feedback would be good to go out in their weekly newsletter.
We do. Yeah, I did do it in education news before Christmas when I read the Ofsted annual report. That's a very good suggestion. Yeah, we reached, I think, they are the people who have done a brilliant job. Yeah, thank you, Ian, for that suggestion.
Thank you. Secondly, Angela, you were going to comment on the overspend or underspend rather, and the variance and the distribution? Because I understand we had an overspend in the inclusion funding, which obviously reduced the provider reserves.
Yes. So yeah, we had a provider reserve of 48,500, which we recently distributed to providers.
Yeah, it was more the fact that the overspend in the inclusion funding never seems to get reported, and obviously that's affected the provider reserves and obviously reduced what's being returned.
Okay, I'll have to take that away.
Yeah, it's more about the details of that. I understand, in terms of doing the calculation of what the contingency is at the end of the year is difficult, and it can take, well, in this case, almost a year to do it. But it's more, if we've got things like overspend in the inclusion fund, we should be reporting those back as in the monitoring. And I think every time I see entries for the monitoring of the early years fund, it says no variance, and that's clearly not the case here in terms of the inclusion fund.
Okay, we'll look at how we report that then to give you a bit more information on that.
Lovely. I look forward to speaking to you on the 28th.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the early years block budget or the notes that Angela has given us?
My only question would be, it's Kerry. My only question would be, if we're going to vote on it in March, but we're hoping to send out the figures to the settings in February, is that going to mean that the settings won't know? I know that particularly for some of our smaller settings, they would find it hard not having their budget before it's so close to the end of year, or the new year, should I say.
And we aim to send out the rates at the end of February. That's the usual time frame, as I understand it. So
and that's still okay if we don't vote until March. That's still okay.
I think so, because we can't.
I think, Kerry, last year we did a similar thing where we met as a task and finish group and agreed. We were agreeable, and I think it came down to the fact that we were happy, and therefore our vote at Schools Forum would be in support.
Perfect. Okay. As long as it's legal and it's going to get sent out, I'm happy.
Sorry, Chair, can I just add? I think that last year there was a formal agreement that the Schools Forum gave the Task and Finish group the power as such to make that decision on behalf of Schools Forum. Is that right, Ian? Did I remember it correctly? Because it's a function of Schools Forum, but if Schools Forum is happy to delegate it to the Task and Finish group, then I think it's fine.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly what we did last year, but I think because we've got a strong Task and Finish group in this area, and as you said, we did that last year, I would be happy for us to do the same again this year. Do we have any objections from anyone on Schools Forum? Do we need to take an official vote, Lucienne?
I think a show of hands on Teams will be fine.
Yeah. Can we just have a show of hands if you're happy for the Task and Finish group to agree those figures and get them out to these providers that will obviously need them?
Honestly, I'm on my phone, the internet's down, so if my hand isn't up, it is really. I apologise. I'm trying to press buttons.
I think that item's carried with the number that we have voted on there.
Thank you. Sorry to ask the question.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, and we'll look at that budget in detail at the March meeting then.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. If we've no more questions on the early years block budget, let's look at our final item on the agenda, which is the forward programme. The only thing I've noted down is we haven't got on that forward plan the high needs block budget to review and vote on, which I know we've talked about today, but we've obviously got to move the vote forward. The early years budget is on there.
Chair, the other thing that I noticed that it's missing is the constitution review, the Schools Forum constitution review.
Yep. Okay, Luciana, we're going to be meeting before that, so we can present papers to Forum before?
Yes, there are not major changes, just to bring it more in line with the current guidances.
Thank you. Just one more point from me. Sorry, Kerry, you've got your hand up still, are you? Catherine, you've got your hand up as well. Do you have questions? Or are they just a legacy hand from the previous vote?
Yes, it is a legacy hand. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I can't get it down.
Yeah, no problem on that. A couple of items, as we said, we talked about the High Needs Task and Finish group, so let us know if you're interested in joining that. But as part of the Constitution, we talked before about having governors or trustees from academies joining the Forum group. I know we haven't had anyone come forward, but if anyone knows of anyone in their schools and their trusts that would be interested, please pass the information along, because it would be good if we could have some more people from the governance level joining Schools Forum. Do we have any further questions from anyone? Any other business that we need to cover? Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time today and your input, and we'll see everyone, I think it's the 12th of March. See you all then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.